All right, welcome to the Erie Music History Podcast. I'm Chip Shell, and today my guest is a guy who has had a long and successful career as an engineer, working for companies like Johnson Controls, Mold Masters. He basically redesigned and rebuilt he and his wife's dream house back in the 80s and 90s, helped raise four kids, and somehow amongst all of that, he managed to play guitar in a bunch of bands. And in one of those bands, he even wore a cape, and we're going to get into that today. So welcome, Jim Buman, to the podcast.
Thank you.
Grab that mic, pull it right up there. All right. So, Jim, you are a McDowell guy, 1970 graduate? Yep. All right. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the early days of Jim Buman as a guitar player. Prior to 1970, were you in any bands? Tell us how you got started in music.
Well, when I was in 8th grade, I went to my first dance, and there was a four-piece band playing. They weren't very good, but all the girls were gravitating towards the band, so I went home that day and told my parents I'm going to get a guitar.
I love that story.
And that's how I got started.
You don't remember the name of that band either, probably.
No. But so I started jamming. I got a guitar the very next year. I was jamming with people, and all through junior high school and high school, I played, but wasn't really in any kind of major band, and I wasn't really learning the guitar like I really should have. I really didn't start off with the talent. I just wanted to play to meet chicks, I guess.
You got it. Were you taking lessons from anyone?
No, I was just doing my own
self-taught,
the books and
the
all
books.
That. Well,
yes.
With the chords and everything.
Right.
Just everything was by ear. But
sure.
Years later, I went back and learned notes and learned all the different guitar scales and everything.
Right.
But it came to a point probably around my senior year or right afterwards that I thought, well, maybe I really better learn this instrument.
And you said earlier, we were talking before the podcast, you know how to play bass too. That just came naturally later on, I take it? You didn't.
Bass and guitar and actually keyboards came all at the same time because my parents always had a keyboard in a house.
Oh, okay.
One of those just old junky ones, that you plugged in and played. And I played bass as well because, I never knew what I was going to end up with in a band or who would need somebody, So
got it.
I played all three from the beginning, but I mostly concentrated on lead guitar.
How about your siblings? Any musical?
All of them I had them take piano lessons. I bought a real nice, home piano for acoustic piano for them all to learn on.
Oh, this is your kids.
Yeah.
I meant your brothers and sisters.
No, I had two brothers.
Sorry,
yeah, and the two brothers did not play. My younger brother was probably the most talented in music.
Okay.
Because sometimes he could pick up just my guitar and he could figure out stuff faster than I could, but he had no desire to really to do it. So
Jim eventually helps you as a roadie later on. In what, Guardian or Crisis or one of the bands,
My brother, right?
Yeah, your brother.
He was the sound man for Guardian.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Larry was the one that was naturally talented? Is that what you're saying?
No, that was Bob.
Oh, Bob.
Yeah,
okay.
That's why he was a good sound man. He had a good ear.
Got it. Okay. All right. So, so you're playing around. You graduate McDowell. Obviously, did you go to Barron eventually or right away?
Yeah. No. I was a tool and die apprentice for 4 years.
Okay.
It got me out of Vietnam by, getting we were doing, weapons or military stuff where I was working at.
Yeah.
And I got a deferment just to stay out of it. And by the time I finished up, the war was pretty much getting finished too.
Got it.
But I was going to Barron through my whole apprenticeship. And then over the years, when I was at Johnson Controls, they actually, paid for my degree to finish up.
Okay. All right. So during those years between 70 and 73, I know you start playing in Crisis in 73, the band Crisis.
Right.
We should point that out. You weren't in Crisis. Any other bands? Was that your first band?
Well, I do have a little bit of a list just to go by if I can find it here. But when I was in 9th grade, I said, got my first guitar. We were called Reflections of Time, and then pretty much all the same people. We stayed together through high school.
Who were those people?
One was Raymond Beckwith. He played rhythm guitar. We didn't have a bass guitar. That's why I played once in a while. And then Garner Klinger was a keyboard player. And then we ended up getting Dave Anea on keyboards.
Okay.
So we pretty much played together all through up through high school. And in my senior year, I started a different band with there was two twin brothers named Conasees. and one played bass and one played drums.
Okay.
And then another guy from Erie Tech, his name was Skip Bachmeyer. He was the singer. Dave and Aya moved over with keyboards with us, and we were called Revolution.
All right. Were all these bands, or both these bands, playing like what? Dances and stuff like that?
Yeah, like mostly we would play at, people had parties, or we played at Senior Wyco.
Yeah.
We played at Junior Wyco.
Okay.
And we played at a lot of school dances like Harbor Creek. We seemed to have connections at Harbor Creek, so we played out at Harbor Creek a lot.
But you were a Mill Creek guy, or did you live?
I grew up in the city. Then my parents moved to McDowell, so I started there in 10th grade.
Oh, okay.
So, but
all those other guys go to
they're
school?
all from in town. Everybody I knew.
All right. Any of them still playing today?
No, not that I know of. But it's interesting. When I went to McDowell, somewhere between maybe the class of 70, which I graduated in, and up into some of the other kids that were younger that were going to school, like Keith Vashek was a year or two younger than me. Stevie McConnell was, maybe 3 years younger than me, but there was a Mike DeFusa, there was a Louis Yershevik, John Thompson, Thomas Snook, Tom Stone, Lee Velamont, Dave Shantz, Chris Moore, and Bruce Rothenall, that all played in bands. And
Bob Raphael, too.
And Bob Raphael,
yeah.
And they were all good. They were all, most of them were all, ahead of me in music and doing better. And some were like, Keith Vasheko and Stephen McConnell that were like prodigies,
Absolutely.
But anyway, so, there was a lot of musicians at McDowell when I was there.
I'm always surprised in that era, like you said, 70 to 74, there's a lot of guys that came out of there that went on to play for a long time, and form bands. So you're playing, at least you're playing in some formalized bands and everything. When was your first bar gig?
Well, when I got to the next band, I got right when I was graduating, started a band called Steel Blood.
Whoa.
And that went through a lot of different musicians for, about 3 or 4 years. We were together for almost 4 years.
Okay.
And the last version of it was the original drummer that was in my early band when I was in junior high school, Garner Klinger.
Yeah.
I talked him into playing bass, and I taught him how to play bass. And he already had the rhythm, as a drummer.
Right.
And he actually took on to the bass really well. And he was able to sing backup. I sang lead. And we got together with a drummer named Sonny Froman.
Who still plays today.
And he was a lead singer. People don't realize it because he's been in Hawaii for, 30, 40 years.
Right.
Just came back maybe 5 or so years ago, and he's a phenomenal drummer.
I don't see Don Ho, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't see him doing a lot of singing anymore, but he had a really high voice. And we were doing 3-part harmony back in the early 70s.
What were you singing? What was Steel Blood doing? I know you do a lot of originals.
We did a lot of originals
in
Steel Blood, and we did a lot of we were all over the map. We did some heavier rock originals.
Yeah,
we actually played. I remember we were doing some heavier metal songs. And we would do like some Aussie songs and different things, but we did a lot of old rock and roll too.
Oh,
Sonny Froman really liked doing the old rock and roll, different Beatles songs and a lot of 3-chorded songs. But as long as they kicked and they were moving.
Okay.
But we played at some bars and we were playing more and more. It was picking up, getting steadier, and doing all the high school. Again, still doing the high school dances and all that.
Yeah, because you're just out of high school, a few years, right?
Yeah.
And you're working. You have a full-time job, right?
Yeah.
So this was a side project for you.
Yeah, it always was.
Always was. Okay, all right. And so Steel Blood, what happens with Steel Blood?
Well, Sonny moved to Hawaii.
Oh, that's when he left. Oh,
yeah, he left around 73 or 74, whenever that time period was.
Yeah.
And I just could not find another drummer that could sing. I loved being in 3-piece bands. That was my first 3-piece band.
Yeah.
We were having a lot of fun doing it. And so anyway, that's when I started Crisis with we went through different musicians in that band as well.
Or you had Frank Mayer for a while, Jim Hullings, Bill Mackrell?
Yeah, Bill McCrell on drums.
Right.
We went through a lot of drummers. We had a Dana Smith on drums, But what a lot of people don't realize, I have pictures in my studio that show it, but Dale Chadwick, who later became a guitar player and singer in the Snowmen, was a really good drummer, and he had a really high voice.
Wow.
So he actually played in the band with us for a while.
Wow.
And it gave us a 3-part harmony because only Frank and I sang when we were in Crisis, and then Dale Chadwick brought the 3rd-part harmony in. But then he was going, he really wanted to play guitar.
Okay.
And he knew what he wanted to do and what direction that he was going to go into.
And were you guys doing the same type of music in Crisis? I mean, a lot of originals mixed in, or
yes,
was it?
Yeah, we were doing same kind of stuff, pretty much. Anything, from Rolling Stones, Beatles, back then, but and originals, and and then so that went as far as probably maybe 74, 75, and then I had my first bigger band. I want to say a bigger band that. I can't remember all the musicians. John McElhenney was the drummer, though, and there was an Osiki. Mark Osiki was a bass player.
Okay.
He sang. I sang. Oh, and Joe Parker was the lead singer of the band. And Tony Farrar, it was his first band. He was only 16.
Is this Bogart?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we needed him to bring in for the double lead because we were doing anything from Kansas to Styx to whatever.
Wow.
And that was 75.
And that's funny. I always envision you as that type of guy. You like that type of, like we just got done talking. I loved Joe Rockhead, your band, and Kansas, and any like even prog rock type of stuff. I always associate you with. You seem to like that type of stuff.
Right.
Does that lead us into, from Bogart, does that lead us into what I think a lot of people remember you by is Guardian?
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, that led up to Guardian because Bogart was only together for about a year, and it was like, a lot of cooks in a kitchen, and it was, it was tough. The same typical things with when you get a bigger band like that, it's more to manage. And I wanted to get back into a 3-piece band, so I actually lived at an apartment for a while that Dale Chadwick was living with a lady that owned the apartment building.
Okay.
And she was my landlord, and up in the attic, all the bands from all over Erie used to come and jam.
Where was this?
And that was on 26 between Peach and Sass.
Okay.
So that's, and even after Dale Chadwick, left to do other things, I left to do other things as well, but we still remained friends. And even afterwards, when I lived in Westerville, I'd still go back and we'd jam up in his attic. Huh. And some of the guys from the Snowmen would jam up there. I would jam. And Dale Chadwick was starting his early, I guess, destination to be in the Snowmen. They were called maybe Speed Queen.
Right.
And he was starting to work with that. And his one guitar player, Kevin Deaver, we needed some money for a while, and some jobs came up while I was working on what was going to be Guardian. They were working on what was eventually going to be Snowmen. We put together a band, and I can't even remember the name of the band, but we were playing at not the Siebenberger Club, but the Sagerbund Club.
Where's that?
And that was between Parade and German, somewhere there off of 12th Street, and it went down towards 11th Street.
Okay.
The parking lot was
Sagerbund?
Sagerbund Club.
Okay.
1 a.m. to 5 a.m. And, some of us, like myself, had a full-time job. Had to be at work at 7.
And people came.
Yeah. Oh, it was crowded. It was packed.
Oh, my God.
It was 5 nights a week, and it was like the late hours. Frank Mayer played bass.
Right.
I played lead guitar. Kevin Deaver played lead guitar, and Dale Chadwick played the drums. We just did it. We did it for almost a year. We had played dances and we'd play around, and we just did it for the money while we were working on our regular projects just to keep playing. No
originals in that, just all covers. So
just all covers.
Yeah,
stuff.
Right. So you're just doing it for the money.
Yeah, and the fun.
Can't remember the name.
Weekend Jam, maybe. It was something stupid. We just threw something together. That could be it. I don't know.
And only pretty much played Sagerbund. You said some other dances.
Well, that was our steady place. But then we still did. Even back then, this was like 70. Took us up to 75 and 76, and we were playing at. Still playing at high school dances. Okay, yeah. And we were all young enough to get away with doing high school dances and whatever was available out there. But then eventually, I got teamed up with Dave Sipple for the drummer of
Drums.
Guardian. He
Right.
sang lead, and Keith Mazanowski played bass. And
How did you meet those guys? I mean, just through the music scene where they played?
I met Dave Sipple through a jam. Somebody needed a band, and they put a bunch of musicians together, and I ended up with a bunch of people. And Joe Parker actually was singing, and Dave played drums. Jack Belzik was on keyboards. So we just did some stuff together, but Dave and I became really good friends, and he was never allowed to sing in any band that he was in. So we started jamming together, and I realized that he had a really good voice.
Cool.
And so we started jamming together, and we kept trying to find a bass player, and then we eventually ran into Keith Mazanowski.
And we were talking basses before we got on the air. Now, am I right? Keith played an upside down, backwards 4001.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a killer bass, as we just got done talking about, but he played it backwards because he's left-handed.
He played backwards, so I had to go on opposite sides of the stage.
Oh, okay.
I've always, like right now, I mean, I play I'm right-handed. I play on the right-hand side of the stage. That's what I've always done. In Guardian, I had to be on the other side of the stage so our guitars wouldn't hit.
Right, yeah.
it was very unorthodox. I didn't even want to look at his fingers when he was playing because it was upside down.
Well, you guys eventually record at least a 45 and some other stuff, but tell me, so what happens with that band? I mean, let's just start with the cape. Let's start with the costumes. Like, you must go into it with a plan, like, hey, because is Dale then off trying to do Snowman at the same time?
Yeah, by the time I'm starting Guardian, he was probably already in Speed Queen, maybe even thinking about going with Snowman, because we played a lot of concerts together.
Oh, okay.
Guardian, and the Snowman, some other local bands, so
you had you had costumes. Not even outfits, the costumes.
Yeah.
Who made those? Where did you get
Well,
them?
we had we got a manager, Frank Gonzalez.
Okay.
His nickname was Tookie. He was like 6'6" and this crazy fro.
Local guy?
And he was a local guy.
All right.
And I met him because he was actually managing a disco band. And I just talked to him. I says, hey, could you help us out?
Yeah.
And he really liked what we were doing. We were doing a lot of originals. And so he brought Keith Pacheco to a couple of our practices just to help critique our vocals and what we were doing, just any advice we could get off of.
Like before you played out?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So he was doing that, and then he says, "Well, you guys need some kind of costumes." We weren't really into costumes, especially Keith Mazanowski didn't want costumes, but he got us these. He got some lady to sew up these things that almost looked like white karate stuff, and it was like a spandex, and she made us these big angel arms, and. So, but we could do whatever we wanted to do them. I tied mine around in the back and had a crisscross just in the front, so an open front with like an X in the front. So we all just made it, however we wanted to make it.
Got it.
And then we started getting, this lady that was doing it. She would, get different colors, and we stuck with the spandex materials, and we had black and we had red. And then I came up with the idea of doing capes.
Okay.
And putting capes on, but we'd have to remove them, probably after the first set, because it was kind of cumbersome in the way with playing the guitar.
Yeah. Were they hot? Those outfits?
No, they weren't really hot. We would wear them in the summer, but we would leave them pretty much open.
Yeah.
And
did you start playing out of town first?
We played, no. It's not really out of town. Back then, it was considered kind of local. Now it'd be considered out of town. But we'd play at Lou's Inn in New York.
Yeah.
Peacock Lounge, which is later Eagle Ridge, maybe.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it was in the Westfield area. There was a lot of places there. Then when the Abbey opened up.
Oh yeah.
We'd play there.
The Peak,
Drink and Drown night on Wednesday.
Oh yeah.
So there was a lot of venues to play. But then Frank Gonzalez was really good. He got us We were the second to the last band to play what would be Celebrate Erie today. Back then was called the Arts Festival.
Right. Yeah. 78. You played the Summer Festival of the Arts, and
2 years in a row.
2 years in a row. So I mean, I think that was your first local gig.
Yeah.
And like you said, like that was the thing to go to. And as a musician, that was a big gig.
Huge.
Yeah. I mean, tell them where it was and everything back then.
Well, it's still almost the same. It was like, I don't know, maybe 6th and State. It wasn't down the 4th at that time.
Oh, was it downtown?
Yeah, it would be right by, because I can visualize seeing the two parks on each side.
Oh, okay, all right.
So yeah, it was still downtown. It originated somewhere else.
I thought at Villa originally.
Yes.
Yeah.
But when we played, by the time we played, which was, I think we did 77 and 78.
Yeah.
But it was downtown.
All right.
That's when we came on with the capes, and we had a lot of fire too. I designed a 12-foot fire trough, and we had put Coleman gas in it because it wasn't quite as flammable.
All right.
And lots of the flash bombs that everybody was doing.
Yeah.
And we had a couple of our roadies had fire extinguishers because either our costumes were always getting sparked off or something somewhere because it was very crude.
Yeah. Sure. Back then
we were doing a lot of gunpowder on stage.
And Shrimp was one of your roadies?
He was he came into our practice one time. Again, when we were practicing, we were open to ideas, and Keith Mazanowski knew him. He brought him in, and he always wanted to play lights, and and he was real interested in it. So I worked with him, and he actually did the lights, and then we brought a friend of his in to do the special effects.
Oh, so Shrimp is Mike Pius, and he passed away, and he eventually would go on to be Friction's guy for many years.
Yep. After Guardian broke up, he went with Friction.
Yeah. A well-known guy. So that's what I was getting at, was a band like Guardian with all that stuff. You got to have a support crew helping out with all that, you know, right? I mean, who else was helping you? Do you remember back then? Your brother?
My brother, Bob, was the sound man.
Okay.
And we had another guy. I can't remember his name, but he was like a roadie, but he would help out with sound too. He did a lot of the stage stuff for running back and forth. Yeah. So we had two guys actually for sound, and then we had Mike Pius on lights, and he always had a helper that would help him, with the special effects and all that. And a couple of people just wanted to be part of the band, so there was always at least two regular roadies that would come.
Well, that special effects, you throw that term out there, but back then, costumes, special effects, like that was a thing, like you had to do as a band to really garner a lot of attention, right? Yeah. Was there anybody else in town that was doing that aside from the Snowmen? Eventually became kind of that. Obviously.
Well, yeah, they did. They did their own thing by doing what they were doing, and I think eventually everybody started doing the pyro stuff on stage, where we with the propane,
a fire trough. I don't remember.
We were the only one that did the fire trough, and when it set off on each end. When it came to the middle, we had a thing of gunpowder in there, and it just did a giant flash. But we had 3 propane torches that I put together, one in the center and one in each end. It would make about a 6-foot column of flame come up.
All right, yeah. So you're a guitarist, band coordinator, and also the special effects guru for everything, right?
Yeah.
All right.
When I look back on it, I wished I could have concentrated on the music more. We were concentrating on the
show,
the show, show, and the whole bed.
Well, you did concentrate on the music long enough to record that 45. Tell me about that. Did you record with Keith?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And we did it at his home studio. And
back then, when it was in his home on 29th,
and his helper and partner was John Mazza.
Correct. Right.
Yep. And took us a long time because we weren't as prepared as we should have been. But he actually laid down the basic tracks in my studio when I lived in Wesleyville.
Oh, okay.
Where we had the drums in there. So we did the basic tracks there, but then we were just doing all the sound dubs, and Keith was very experimental, trying different, let's try this, and try that.
Oh, cool.
And he even played, because we were just a 3-piece band, so we were doing, some overdubs, and Keith even played in a real nice acoustic part in the one song that we did.
So the 2 songs, What Did We Do and Freedom's Way, right?
Yeah, and on those songs on that compilation CD I did 5 years ago,
right?
That's on that CD that I gave you.
And those reworked versions of it?
No,
on the CD? Those are the originals?
Yeah, because they were just done on 8 tracks that were long since lost.
How many 45s did you press? You remember? Or?
We pressed about 1,000.
Okay. And what would you do, sell those at shows?
I think we gave most of them away.
Yeah.
You know.
Was the plan to record an album?
The plan was to do an album. We had enough material that we could have done 2 albums.
Oh, wow.
And even then it was a little easier doing originals because everybody was doing it, but there wasn't a lot of venues for it. Just like today, there's
hardly any today.
Yeah, it's even tougher today. But everybody knew if you wanted to go on the road, if you really wanted to, what you considered like making it was to do originals, and I thought we did some really nice originals. The ones we put into 45 were the more marketable ones. Our other originals were longer and more involved.
Okay, yeah.
We had a song called, that was 8 minutes long called Cry of the Banshee, and just, some really fun originals.
Yeah.
Really, and the band really did, all 3 of us enjoyed doing that more than doing cover music. And because we did originals, we did the opposite of what I do today, because, just playing in cover bands, I'm a believer. I want it to be exactly like the people know it on the recording, to make it as perfect as you could. And that's one of the things that the Snowmen did, at that time when I was in Guardian. They were kind of doing the opposite of what I was doing in Guardian. They were doing songs, good cover songs like Zeppelin and whatnot, and they were playing them exact. I mean, perfect.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But when we did a cover song, we made it our own because
we
were just trying to be original, so we would kind of rewrite them and do them our way.
There's an article that I read from 1979, and it mentions you guys, and it says that they described you as playing heavy metal and a lot of originals. I mean, probably wasn't what we consider heavy metal today, but back then it was probably hard rock. I mean, what types of covers were you doing, at least, to give people a gist?
Well, we would mostly do, a lot of them would be like maybe the B-sides of records or albums, different things. Or we would take older songs. I remember like Jumpin' Jack Flash and just kind of rewrote it and did our own version of it. Another thing that we did was Sandman by America.
Yeah, wow, that's
weird.
We
did that, but we did like a rock version of it.
Okay.
Yeah. We even played a couple Kansas songs as a 3-piece band.
Wow.
But again, we had to kind of rewrite them and do them as a 3-piece band. We would just do, the covers were all over the place.
Yeah.
But then we actually did a couple Cars tunes towards the end of the band.
Okay.
Just because Cars were just coming out.
Yeah.
And I was playing keyboards as well all through Guardian. I was mostly playing guitar, but I had one of the earliest Moog synthesizers.
Oh, wow.
It was just monophonic, one note at a time, and it was only a 3-octave unit. But I could get some really neat sounds in there. But that's how we were able to do the Cars. And then I had just a 5-octave keyboard below that could do organ or piano or whatever. Okay. So most of the time that I played the keyboards in Guardian, I still had my guitar on. I'd just come up and just do different spots just for our originals.
Got it. Okay.
So, I'd do the keyboard parts and then go back on the guitar.
Mark Gorzicki, who's been on the podcast, great local guitar player, he said he still remembers the Erie Center, New York concert. What is the deal with that?
Well, he was in Easy, and they played there.
Oh, okay, so he was there at the same
Dale
time.
Chadwick was in Snowman. They played there. I played there. And
was it like a big festival? Or
Yeah, and this was put on by the manager, Frank Gonzalez, and he was working with a couple other big names. Might have been John Barton, the karate guy.
Okay, all right.
Because he did some projects with Frank Gonzalez. But I get, it's so long ago. Sometimes there was a lot of them that were done. One was a couple of them were at Moon Meadows.
Right. Yeah.
So so I can't remember all the different promoters and all that. But at Ellicottville, or where was not
Erie Center?
Erie Center, yeah.
Yeah.
It started raining later.
Oh.
And we had a canopy, but it wasn't real good, and it was it would rain off and on. It wasn't
not good.
Yeah, it wasn't really fun. And they had every band bring their own PA, and they were going to try to put 4 PAs together.
Oh, shit.
And it just didn't work out. Nobody was able to put it all together. So we ended up using the best PA that was there, and that was Snowman's.
Sure.
They had a community sound system.
Yeah, right.
And we still had the big old L-Tech Lansings, and it was Voice of the Theaters and all that.
Yeah.
But they had the new stuff out on the market, the community sound. So everybody, played through that system.
And those Moon Meadow festivals, those were a lot of people remember those. I mean, 78, 79. So 78, Benny Mardones is like the headliner. You know, I think he's a one-hit wonder. And then in 79, Joe Grachecki comes and plays. And so it's not like, you know, it was just local folks. They were adding, you know, these other players. Do you remember any of those? Or Yeah. And like you said, you played festivals and Summer Festival of the Arts.
We played a lot of really good shows. And again, I really give Frank Gonzalez a lot of the credit because he was actually getting managing Easy for quite a while.
Okay.
There was kind of a falling out with him and Guardian because him and the drummer kept getting our drummer was getting a lot of arguments with him, and they didn't like, you know, some of the direction that he was going with or which way he was going. But I knew that you needed somebody that could really, you know, get the band into where the exposure.
Great places.
And he did it. I mean, he did places where we could have never done on our own. We didn't have the time. I mean,
right.
You know, most of us were working full day, you know, time jobs. And
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Any families at this point?
I was married, got married right at the beginning of Guardian.
Okay.
And Dave Sipple got married about a year later.
All right.
So now you're married and you're still trying to, you know, do all this on the road. And,
yeah. That's a lot to coordinate and plan. And, you know, is Frank still around?
He's around, but not in Erie anywhere.
No. Yeah. Did he go on did he do other bands, like you said, maybe Easy or some of the other ones?
He was doing Easy. Well, then he started doing stuff around the country, and he invited us down. He was doing a thing. There was a place on down south, Ocean City, Maryland, the party one. There's an Ocean City, New Jersey.
Yeah,
Maryland's the crazy one.
Yeah.
And there was an old theater, and he was renting it, and they were doing shows, boardwalk shows. And Easy would go down there, Snowman would go down there, Guardian was down there twice.
Okay.
And so, you know, he was always doing something. Well, another thing I forgot all about is that he started his own club called the A&E Club. Artists and Entertainment Club.
Oh, he had that.
In Erie.
Yeah, downtown, yeah.
So we would get to play there on a regular basis. It gave all the bands, all the local bands a way to play. You know, it was big. It was a nice stage. It was a nice place.
He's been mentioned on the podcast before. I think Antoine Jack told a good story about him. But now that you say the A&E Club,
Yeah, he didn't leave well, I guess. You know, a lot of things went sour. You know, he was trying to make a living on it. He couldn't make a living on just managing one band, so he had to start managing other bands. So then there was a lot of animosity between bands. Well, you're doing more for that band than us, and all this stuff. And then once he got his own club, you know, he's got to think about making money off the club.
Right.
I mean, I understand business really well, and I get it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But we remained friends over the years. But then. You know, time goes on and out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yeah. Well, then what happens with Guardian? 79, you're playing at least. How far into the 80s did you go?
Well, we actually, towards the end, and I don't know why it happened, just because I think he became available, but Mike DeFusa, who I knew from McDowell, was a really good singer and a really good guitar player. He became available, so we were starting to, you know, work as a 4-piece band. Then I could play more keyboards too, and we could do double lead. So towards the end of the band, we were going in that direction, and it was just getting hard to keep it together. I think Dave Sipple had other things on his mind, what he wanted to do, and Keith Mazanowski, I don't know if he was getting tired of doing originals, and it didn't seem like we all thought early on that we were going to be, you know, stars right away, and it really didn't happen. And you really need to make a sacrifice, you know, like what the Snowmen did. They moved out to California.
Right.
Whether it was the right thing or the wrong thing, they did a sacrifice to try to really get more exposure.
Sure. Right.
And, you know, they did take it to another level, you know, out there.
Right.
And I don't think anybody, you know, because I was married and I was still in my apprenticeship, and Dave Sipple was actually in a plumbing apprenticeship.
Okay.
So we were not able to go on the road. And,
right.
You know, so I think it just came to a point there we broke up in a friendly manner and went on to different bands and different things.
Okay. Well, what was that next band for you then?
Well, I stayed together with Mike DeFusa, and he passed away about 10 years ago. He was living in Arizona, but he's one of the McDowell guys. And So, and I played even more keyboards, Then I started trading off, and we would do 3 sets normally, and 1 set I would do just keyboards.
And this is still Guardian?
No, this is, it was Chaos.
Oh, this is Chaos.
Literally Chaos, with a K.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's funny, like in the 80s, then I kind of lose track of you, and I don't know what bands that you played in then.
Yeah. Well, that was like probably 80 to 82.
Okay.
And we were doing Chaos, and then we would be, some of the regular places would all through New York. All the ones that were, border town ones. Like the Abbey was still going really strong. There was
Pappy's Place.
What's that?
Pappy's Place in Wattsburg.
Yeah.
You played there, I know, early on. And what were some of the other ones?
I mean, there was Lou's Inn, still Peacock Lounge.
Yep, right.
And Snug Harbor Lounge.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of different places to play. And we were playing. We did it. We didn't get an evening spot or late evening spot, but we did get a spot at the Erie Arts Festival.
In Chaos.
Yeah.
With a K.
Yeah.
All right.
And we were wearing the same kind of clothes. We were doing the spandex and with the bell bottoms. And,
all right.
And all that. But the problem that you get into a lot of bands is we were going through different drummers and going through different bass players. And
freaking bass player.
It's hard to keep up the momentum every time you got to take a step back and bring somebody else in. And we even brought Dave Sipple back for a little while. And
same type of music.
Yeah. But way less original. We were doing some originals, maybe a half dozen originals, and the rest cover songs.
Okay, all right.
But we were doing, because I played the keyboards, we were doing a lot more Cars, a lot of new wave.
Okay, yeah.
Went into new wave, and a lot of different, more commercial dance music.
That's new. I mean, that's real new at the time. Early '80s and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I don't think of Guardian as a dance band. So this is the first time you said dance music.
Right.
I mean, what were some of the places in town that you were playing? Was it a Sherlock's or Goofy's or?
Well, there was still the A&E Club. We could play A&E
right.
Club. Yeah, I think we did play at Goofy's, and there was other places. There was a place. Was it Lombardo's, 18th and Sass, or something like that?
Yep. Right. Yeah.
So there's places to play.
Okay, yeah, and so that band sticks around for about 2 years. You said maybe in the '80s.
Yeah,
and
that's where I drop off because we were having kids by that time.
That's what I figured. Yeah,
and so I dropped off for a while, maybe about 6 years or something like that.
Okay,
but then that leaves me like in the mid '80s when I was at Johnson Controls. That's when I actually started another band that became Crisis 2.
Okay.
For some reason, the one guitar player remembered me in Guardian. He was younger, remembered me in Crisis, and he goes, "Oh, I love that name. We got to be Crisis." So, and again, it was just doing the cover stuff with with that band.
And sticks around for a while, or
we were together for a couple of years, but again, it seemed like drummers and bass players were coming and going.
Yeah. All right, and so I always say the podcast goes up to 90. I mean, are we through the 80s now, or?
Yeah, because that takes me to the mid 80s in doing it there. But then I got together with Dave Shantz from. Again, he was one of the singers that came out of McDowell.
Yeah,
and he was in a lot of different bands. Played in bands with Scott Campbell, but we were doing a Christian rock originals.
Oh, wow!
And so we were called Judah.
Okay.
And we had a bass player, drummer. One guy could play either. So Dave Shantz, sometimes he'd sing lead, sometimes he'd play drums. This bass player drummer could play drums, and could play bass, and they were all good singers.
Yeah,
I mean they were. We had the three vocalists doing.
Who was the bass player drummer? Remember his name?
His name was Brett. I can't think of his last name. We're still Facebook friends. Brett something, but
right.
He ended up moving. He's back. He lives in New York now.
Yeah,
but. He ended up moving, and he was such a versatile player that it kind of made it tough to keep on going.
Right.
But we were together doing a lot of originals, and we played at some different outside functions and some these Christian functions outside the church that were doing different things, and we'd play at some different venues. The places to play were far and few between.
Yeah,
I think we did an outside park or a thing at Gibson Park.
Okay, yeah,
and but we were enjoying going back to writing originals again and doing.
But in
all
a
that.
Christian vein, or
Yes, yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And we went in that route, and that takes you, up into the early '90s, and then. I dropped out again, and
right. But then you reemerge with so many different bands that I remember. Like I told you before, Joe Rockhead was one of my favorite bands. Taylor Maid was around for 10 years, like you said, with your niece, who I didn't even realize was your niece, Taylor. Yeah. You play with Harry Parker and Rob Morrison in the Hired Hitmen. You play in Hiway Starr, Angelic Odyssey, which you brought me this awesome CD. I'm sure those aren't in the right order, but you continue. That's my point is like, you haven't taken a break in a long time, it seems.
Well, here's what happened. I had a forced break, and this won't take me long to say, but I wasn't playing in a band in probably from 92 to almost 2000. But what happened was I was just enjoying raising the kids, and we were doing a lot of downhill skiing, and I was going to. I was working full-time at Johnson Controls, but going to Barron almost full-time to get my degrees sped up. They were paying for it, so I was trying to get that as fast as I could. So I was pretty busy, but I had a really bad ski accident in the beginning of '96, and I lost the use of my right arm and hand for 5 years.
Holy cow.
I mean, it's just like completely like just severed the nerves, and it took them months and months and months to figure out exactly what was wrong or what they needed to do.
Yeah.
And then I had 3 opinions, and they all said the same thing. If you don't get surgery now, which it's a simple surgery. Today it's a simple surgery, but they had to fuse some vertebrae together, and they took bone out of my hip, and they needed to free up the nerve. The nerves were severely pinched and damaged.
Yeah.
And the doctor that operated on me was Dalton, and the reason I picked him, he was younger, cockier, really, and he used to play bass in college.
Neurosurgeon.
And he knew what I was going through, because I couldn't even pick up a penny with my. I'm right-handed, so my left hand does all the work. Couldn't even pick up a penny with it, and it was so bad. In fact, I was in a sling for about 2 years just to protect my hand, because it was all it would just hang. It was all over the place.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing was. That was like beginning of '96. We started going to. My kids wanted to go to Grace Baptist Church to be in their youth group.
Yeah.
And it was around '98. And Scott Campbell, who used to play in Clockwise,
right.
I mean, his roots were Christian roots.
Yeah.
And some of the people from Clockwise, some other really good musicians were the house band at Grace Baptist, if you will.
Yep. No, I know.
And it was really nice for me enjoying good music there and going there. And a couple of the guys wanted me to jam with them. The one guy that went to that church, he wasn't in the band, but he was a drummer that I was with at one point, in the '80s.
Yeah.
And he kept telling me that somebody told him that I got to play again. I said, I can't play a chord if my life depended on it. I said, I can, barely move. I said, but I was getting the use back. My thumb was, getting better, and my main lead finger I was starting to get feeling in the finger again.
So you had the surgery. It was just gradually coming back.
Yeah. So this is about 3 years later when I was going to church, and I didn't want to embarrass myself. I didn't think I was going to ever play again, because I couldn't even play an E chord. I couldn't do nothing. And my friend kept saying, "Do you still have a bass guitar?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, because he was a drummer. He goes, "Jam with me." He goes, "I bet you can play bass." And it ended up being great therapy.
Oh, yeah.
Really, I was only playing with my main 2 fingers. As a bass player, you're a bass player too. You got to play with all your fingers, right? Right. And I only had my 2 fingers. The other ones were just totally dead. And to this day, I still have atrophy in my hand.
Yeah.
And I can't move my fingers. These are still, pretty numb. But I started playing bass. And so there was a special one night at this church, and he put together some other musicians, and we did the special, and Scott Campbell and a couple of the other guys saw me, playing. They said, you sound good. Can you play bass? I said, well, barely. I said, but I'm just trying to get at it. He goes, well, our bass player's leaving to go to full-time ministry in the band.
Wow.
We'd like you to play bass for it.
Wow.
And the reason I did it more than anything, because it gave me the incentive to play. And still at that point, I didn't think I'd ever play a 6-string again.
Yeah.
But the bass playing actually was awesome therapy.
Wow.
So we did that for almost 2 years at that church. And for some reason, then they thought they weren't going to have music for a while. They wanted to make a different direction. And the band, the complete band, including me, was offered to play at a church by the airport. You've probably heard of that. Scott might have told you. We put out a CD. It was called Flight Path.
Yeah, no, my brother lives right next to it. Yeah.
So that was my longest staying band, 12 years in Flight Path. I started off playing bass guitar, and by this time, by 2002 or something like that, I was actually pushing myself to play a guitar again.
But there were a bunch of people in that band that were like longtime Erie musicians, right?
Yes.
I mean, didn't Paula Holmes play a little bit?
Yes, she was in the whole duration. Her husband, Phil.
Right, Phil was there too.
Played keyboards. And the drummer actually was Pete Natale.
Right.
And but then they had a chance where Paul Grenberg started going to church, and they said, Jim, he could play bass, and much better bass player than me.
Great bass player.
And he's a true bass player.
Yeah, he is.
And and they said, how are you feeling on doing guitar? Because they knew I was practicing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that gave me the incentive to push really hard. I did like just acoustic guitar. Scott played lead, and I wasn't even ready to play lead yet, but I was starting to play chords again and play acoustic guitar. And so I started doing that, and by this time, my daughter, she's really into playing, and I got together with other friends, and we started a band called Harvest Wind.
Okay.
And and I started playing a little bit more lead, and then by halfway through Flight Path, I actually became the utility player, because sometimes Scott couldn't make it, so I would play lead. Sometimes they'd need a bass player. There was a lot of people, because it was the church was getting more popularity.
Yeah.
And then Jim Dowds came along.
Right. Great
he was
drummer.
playing drums, and he would trade off with Pete.
Yeah.
And so I pretty much played every week. I needed the work, right? Just for my hands. So I would either play lead guitar or acoustic guitar or bass guitar, whatever was needed for that week.
Wow.
And I did that up until 2012 or whatever it was, and when I backed up because at the time Paula and Phil moved to Florida.
Right.
And Scott was getting more and more busy, and
I was playing with Scott back then too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
wow.
in bands, and then Paul and Jim joined the Groove.
Well, before they did that was my first time out to play guitar again. We had a band called RPM.
Oh.
And it was Paul, and because we knew him from church. I'm jamming with my church. I said, "Hey, you guys want to do some stuff?" So I got together with Joe Parker.
Yeah.
He was singing. A friend of mine, Tom Lander, who eventually played in Hiway Starr.
Yeah.
And we were called RPM.
Okay.
And we were playing. I thought we had the best rhythm section, one of the best rhythm sections in Erie. But, it was pretty awesome.
So that was the second time you played with Joe Parker? Or a third, maybe?
Yeah, second or third. Well, we were in an acoustic band, too, in the 80s. I didn't mention it, but a three-piece acoustic band called Riverside.
Okay.
And, So we played in RPM for probably a solid year, but then Jim wanted to take a break, and then out of the clear blue, maybe a year later, though, they ended up being in the Groove.
Yeah.
Jim never liked to play full time.
Okay.
Even in the Groove, he got a backup drummer who's now their main drummer.
Right.
Because but he's a phenomenal drummer.
He is.
Just a great drummer.
But at this point, you're back to guitar.
So I'm playing guitar. I had to relearn around my, my handicaps.
Yeah.
I still had numb fingers to this day. I still have numb fingers, rubbery fingers. I had to learn how to stretch strings a different way, play chords on an unorthodox way.
Wow.
And do what I could do good and highlight on that.
Yeah.
While everything else would come around.
I never realized
But
that.
Doing RPM, it kind of got me back into the click of things. So we actually, even after Jim and Paul left, we kept playing, and we were still playing. And in the meantime, that's when I was starting up Taylor Maid.
Right.
My band with the first, girl.
Yeah, right.
And that was like through Chuck Alloway. He was the last drummer in RPM.
Okay.
So, he kept saying, got to have a girl singer, and none of the other guys wanted to have a girl singer, and I think they were getting kind of tired of the band. So we started working with Taylor Maid, and we knew it was going to be Taylor's, first time in a band.
Right, yeah.
And Bob Omer, he was available, so we got Bob Omer. So we were working with that. We weren't really playing out yet. And then one of our last shows that we did with RPM, Tony Krasinski, Tim Roach, and I think just those two came out to see us at a show because I didn't realize that Jack Campbell was quitting and they needed a guitar player.
Right, yeah.
So they offered me the part. They said, have you ever played these songs? And I did in Bogart.
Yeah, right. Well, some of those Kansas songs you probably played back in the day too. Yeah.
A lot of the songs that I play, and that was where my heart really was.
Absolutely.
But again, I didn't want to embarrass myself. I didn't. I just said, well, can I handle this? Can I really take that next step?
Yeah.
Again. But I did it, and it was fun.
Yeah. Joe Rockhead was such a fun band, and like you said,
you was with them at least 4 years.
And that was you said you were kind of a utility player. You played the acoustic, you played lead, whatever.
Bass when Tony came out front.
Right. Dave Krasinski was in the band playing lead. Yeah. Tony, fantastic stuff. A lot of prog rock stuff. A lot of stuff that people don't. You had Tim Roach playing Boston and Kansas and just killing it with the B. He had a B3.
And the Leslie and Leslie and the thing is, the two Krasinskis have such great voices and they sing so high. I was singing. I was doing all the low third part harmony.
Okay,
and it was at they sing so high. My pitch was usually at my highest range to sing the low part. And Tony'd be the next, and then Dave would be doing the super high parts.
That's wild. So you play with Taylor, your niece, but you also mentioned your daughter likes to play, and then your son, right? You guys formed this CD, Angelic Odyssey.
Yeah, he had a recording studio in Erie for about 5 years.
Okay.
He had a partner and Mark Rosinski, and they were doing that for about 5 years until my son moved.
Okay.
But anyway, so I did the CD there.
Right.
And he was a really good guitar player. He was doing a lot of originals, but he would play it like Sherlock's and Crooked Eye, anywhere they could do the originals out. But he was playing in a lot of different bands out there. And my daughter that was playing with me in different bands, she ended up being in they all have to break away and be in their own band. So
sure.
She was in a jazz band playing keyboards and singing with some prominent people from Erie at the time.
Yeah.
And even my younger daughter was actually a drummer in a band. And then she ended up being the lead singer in a band, and it was a ska band.
Right.
I didn't quite understand it, but hey,
different timing for sure.
They had their own following and all that. Yeah.
So today you're in Cherry Bomb. You've been in Cherry Bomb the past few years.
Yeah.
We talked about our mutual friend Bob Raphael was your bass player. Now Tony Krasinski's the bass player. And you're playing again with a female singer. You have a new female singer, Emily Fote, who's not new to town at all.
Oh gosh, she's a professional. She's awesome.
Right, and you guys play all over, everywhere from Black Monk to I almost said Sherlock. Sherlock's isn't around, but you play down at the beer garden.
Yeah, we'll be there again on next Thursday on August 31st. We do a lot of the bike nights,
right?
VFW bike night,
right?
And we'll be at Oasis in October. So we only want to play once or twice a week.
Okay, all right.
No, sorry, once or twice a month.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Every other weekend is ideal.
Yeah.
We don't play. I developed this habit in Joe Rockhead. And Joe Rockhead, we usually didn't play out from mid-December through mid-March.
Gotcha.
We got tired of carrying our equipment around in the cold and the snow and all that.
Yeah.
And then Tony retired before I did, and he's a snowbird, so we have to wait for him to come back from Florida. So we don't start booking until mid-April now.
Right.
But we work on new songs. Everybody knows, we talk about what songs we're going to work on in the winter.
Right.
We keep practicing and, work on songs. So Cherry Bomb is now, 4 years old.
Yeah.
It went through halfway through, when Bob Raphael passed away, because we were in 3 bands together.
Right.
And that was just devastating. We didn't even know if we were going to continue. And we did, but it was tough because it was tough landing a bass player.
Right.
We went through some bass players that weren't working out really well, and then it was kind of I didn't think Tony would ever do it. I called him up. And I was with the drummer at the time, and I was with the singer that we had at the time, and I said, well, I'm going to call this guy up. He would give us the extra harmonies, a phenomenal bass player. And he actually, when I told him what we were doing, just more of a casual, fun band, and he said, you know what, that's really what I want to do.
Perfect.
He was tired of, the craziness of bands where you're so regimented and where it's not fun.
Yeah.
Too much work. And, he says, yeah, this is good.
Yeah, he's my favorite.
He said he'll stay in the band as long as there's no drama or hassles or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, that brings us to current day. We've covered, I think, everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you being with me today, Jim, and I encourage everybody to go out and check out Cherry Bomb. This won't come out until probably September, so we're recording this now in August. So go out and see Cherry Bomb, see Jim Buman, and I appreciate you being here with me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cool, man. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Erie Music History Podcast. I want to say thanks to the JPT Foundation. They have been a financial supporter of the podcast since the beginning, and they also give us a free space to have our monthly music night on the first Tuesday of the month. It always features our great house band, the Fabulous Leftovers, as well as a lot of other local bands and musicians. Sometimes it's a basic open mic after that, but it's a lot of fun. First Tuesday of the month, totally free. Any donations go to the Second Harvest Food Bank. It is BYOB. You can bring in alcohol, drinks, whatever you like. There's a great pizza shop next door, Pasalinquas. There's a Subway in the plaza, so check that out. The first Tuesday of the month. Aside from the JPT Foundation, I want to thank Angelo Phillips, who has been a financial supporter of the podcast for the past couple months. Angelo is a great local musician who I will be happy to play with. Next year, we're going to play a few gigs together, so looking forward to that. Also, make sure that you check out Jack Stevenson's Two-Man Happy Hour podcast. Basically tells you where people are playing today, where and when, and you can check that out at the number2manhappyhour.com. Check that out. He also does a weekly podcast with our sound man for the monthly music night, Brian Waller, as well as Nat the Hat. So the three of them do a great podcast where they interview local musicians, and they again talk about who is playing where. But more importantly, they play a lot of local music on that. So check that out. That's Music Chat with Nat the Hat, and you can find that on Facebook anywhere. All right, that's all I got for you. Thanks again for listening.